Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bluegrass Jam Along. This week's episode is a Bitesize episode and features Sara Watkins of I'm With Her. I spoke to Sara last year about the band's album Wild and Clear and Blue, which I absolutely love. And a couple of weeks ago, the album won a Grammy. But not only that, the band also won a Grammy for the song Ancient Light. And so I wanted to put a bit of this out just kind of to celebrate that, because it's a record that I really, really love, and we had a fascinating conversation about it. And I'm sure some people are coming to this record post-Grammys, kind of not having got around to listen to it before, or maybe you're digging back into it post-Grammys, or maybe it's new to you, but I just wanted to share a bit of this because it was such a wonderful, thoughtful, fascinating conversation about a wonderful, thoughtful, fascinating record. I'll stick a link in the show notes to the full interview if you want to go and hear the rest of it, because we cover quite a bit more. There's another half hour or so of this, and it was really interesting stuff. I will also stick in a link to the interview I did with Sarah Jarosz about Blue Heron Suite, which we mentioned briefly during this interview, in case you want to listen to that as well. But that is it. Short and sweet intro. Just this is one of the favourite interviews I've done for Bluegrass Jam Along, and one of my favourite albums to talk about. So if you haven't heard this, I really hope you enjoy it. And if you've heard it before, I hope you enjoy it again. I've listened to this one several times just to kind of hear what Sarah talks about and to digest a bit more of it and process it. And each time it brings me back to the album with a little bit more detail and insight. Here comes Sara Watkins talking about I'm With Her's Wild and Clear and Blue.
I think quite consciously did not over farm these ideas before we brought them to the band. When we made our first record, it was a little bit like bigger chunks of songs that we were bringing together. We were still learning how to write together, learning like what our band sound was. And then we got to tour and write a lot more together during the course of that first album cycle. Pandemic happened, and then so it was about a year and a half of just not seeing each other. And truly the first time that we got together was we had, this thought of, well, maybe we'll write something, but really we just kind of want to reconnect on a human level, check in, see how we're doing. It was the fall of 2021. And so everyone was sort of finding their way of adapting and coming back into the world again. And one of the things that we reconnected on first was, was very common, this passage of time, and particularly two people that we had just lost, Nancy Griffith and John Prine. And we started writing a song that became the title track of the record, Wild and Clear and Blue. And there were a couple other songs that got touched on that first session. And then about 10 months later, we got together again and with a few seed ideas, and then again the next year with few seed ideas. But, the songs didn't really get touched in between the sessions. We really worked on the songs when we were together with each other, and then would put them to bed until our next rendezvous. And, I think that all these songs, like if we're singing a song like Only Daughter, which is one that Sara Jarosz sings, who I know you've spoken with.
Yes.
And who really enjoyed her time talking to you.
We had a great conversation. It was amazing.
That's what she said. She sings that song. I play fiddle on a little bit of it, and I sing harmony, later on. But these songs, even though they're not songs that feature each of us, they all feel like we have shared ownership of them because of the really collaborative way that they came into being. And I know Sarah and Aoife feel the same way about these songs. They all feel like band songs, as opposed to like a song of mine that the band plays,
It's that thing of, you get, when you watch Crosby, Stills and Nash, who's written the song, and they sound amazing together, but whose song it is each time a song starts. And it's that, It's that the word that gets bandied around with I'm with her is supergroup, and I kind of feel like every time I see it, just crossing out super and just kind of having group there, because it feels like it feels misleading, if you know what I mean. It downplays the group element.
That's right. I think that when I think of supergroups, I think of the same thing where that you're saying, like it's a bunch of individuals that are coming together to play songs together. And I love, I mean, like there's been some great music from those entities. And but I think that, you know, we always aspired, and I'm sure we're not alone in this. Every band wants to sound like a band. Everyone wants it to feel like a cohesive thing. And that's certainly what we want. You know, we really love bands. We really want it to be different from our solo projects, because we do our own things. Like Sarah Rose puts out record after record that's gorgeous. Aoife, the same thing. You know, I have my solo projects, and that's that. And we don't need this band to be another version of that. We want this band to be its own thing that's very distinguishable from our solo projects, rather than just like a variant of it.
Yeah, well, and it not only does that feel true, like I've seen you play live, I've seen footage of you guys play live, and it feels like that, but also this record particularly feels like there are threads that run through the whole record. Whoever might have had the seed of the idea for a song, the songs feel like almost a song cycle, like listening to I don't know, a Schubert song cycle. It feels like there's a journey and an arc, and where it puts you down reminds you of where it picked you up, and there's points in the middle that weave through all of it, and it feels like a very complete record as well.
Thank you so much for saying that. We want that to be the case, and I think that the themes made themselves clear pretty quickly in the album writing process. We didn't realize, I don't think we identified them immediately, because we didn't have the full scope of the songs until the last writing session, when we really got our 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th song. And we started realizing, you know, where the patterns were, and you know, maybe leaning into them a little bit more whenever we needed help, you know, making something truly effective. It was nice to see, like, oh, there are threads of thought throughout these songs, such as like Ancient Light is the name of a song. There's also, that also comes into, that's also a lyric. Ancient comes into a lyric of Only Daughter. And then there are all these kind of like mystical themes that come through in Sisters of the Night Watch, and also, you know, Mother Eagle. And it feels to me like these themes are there's like this mystical sort of like trying to tap into any human intuition that is left in us from ancient times, and you know, drawing on those guides from the past, and ancestors, musical ancestors, familial ancestors, and trying to, you know, use them in the present and send them into the future, which, you know, it's basically just life. And so there are a lot of songs that I'm thinking of. This one that Aoife sings, Different Rocks, Different Hills, that feels like a very day in, day out applicable, you know, life, like just kind of like getting through life. And then there are some other ones that are a little bit more mysterious, and I like the balance of that. I find that, like, thematically it feels really relevant to my life right now, and not just like a document of something that happened in the recent history of our lives. Feels like we're still like walking out these songs when we play them live.
Well, it's really interesting because you're saying kind of the beginning about kind of getting back just to reconnect, really. And it feels like all of the themes of the record could sort of fall under an umbrella of connection, whether that's like connecting the past to now, connecting people, connecting, like, you know, there's so many layers of that run through the record. And even the songs within themselves, there are bits of material that crop up outside of the song they come from. So there's a bit of the chorus from it's Mother Eagle, isn't it, that comes in the kind of bridge bit of Ancient Light. Yeah, it's Ancient Light, it is. Yeah, there's a little chunk of that you sort of take out and drop in there, and then the Strawberry Moonrise, which comes out of another song, and it's, the record is, I find myself, if I listen to it and I get 2/3 of the way through and for whatever reason I have to stop, I get a bit cross because it feels like I've not finished this journey. And not many records feel like that these days to me.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for saying that. That's a dream to have, like, for music to have that effect on somebody,
Well, and I'm really interested because of the length of the writing process. Like, and you said the themes sort of became clear as you went. Because, you might get together 4 years ago and have a bunch of things that matter to you in your life. But for those to still be the same things 4 years later, I find that fascinating. And maybe it's that thing of, maybe it's me just superimposing myself all over this. But I'm at a point in my life where so many people I know have kind of kids that are still at school, but parents that are starting to need them more a bit. And kind of life is coming at you from both angles. And so you become aware of like that continuum of being a kid, being a parent, being a grandparent, and how all of that plays out in a very different way than you are when you're a bit younger, maybe.
100%. I think we're all in that. But Eva and I are in our 40s. Rose is 10 years younger than me. So I'm certainly experiencing that with that experiencing life through the eyes of the kids that are hanging out with my daughter, with younger family members, as well as seeing parents get older and navigating insurance and navigating practicalities and just like the very human aspects that we get to ignore for an earlier chunk of that a lot of us get to ignore for an earlier chunk of our lives. And there's just so much rich beauty in that and realness. I think for me, like part of the album that addresses the more like, we're speaking to like our guides or like our sisters or like anybody, like, can you like, just like desiring assistance as we walk an unsure path. And some of that I think is looking inward and figuring out, like, do I have the capacity to do this alone or do I need help? Like, where can I get help? Who can help me? Can I help myself? Looking to family, listening back to stories that, you were told as a kid from grandparents or older people and realizing how true those, cliches and tropes were, and realizing that some of those are those guides and helpers that can be with us all along the way. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of leaning on ancestral advice and wisdom and like companionship that in these times of life where we don't really understand what's going on or what will happen, or we realize that we are a little bit on a ride of life, that there are things that we kind of reach toward instinctually, and learning how to kind of lean on those as best we can be helpful. And I think some of these songs are sort of going into that mantra. At least for me, that's how I experience them.
Well, it's really interesting because I really subscribe to the idea that it takes a village to raise a child, but it's only kind of later in life I kind of realized it also takes a village to sustain an adult, and you sort of like all those connections. And I just love listening to Wild and Clear and Blue, and the idea that a singer or a song can be part of that, can be a thing that sustains you and a thing that grounds you and a thing that, that sort of shared experience in music. I've been through some stuff in the past few months. I lost my dad in March, and
I'm so sorry.
It was a strange relationship I had with him. But that song, Wild and Clear and Blue, reminded me that it's all this thing of being a kid and sticking tapes in the car, and it reminded me of just sitting around in the house with him listening to music. And kind of in a way, that song allowed me to reclaim that bit as a good bit and go, I'm having that. Like, that's a lovely thing that I forget amongst all the other stuff. Part of what is my favourite thing about me is kind of the way I connect with music, and that comes from my dad, and that's a great thing. And it's such a simple song in so many ways, but it's also like it's deep. The line about static and childhood days, and I think in 40 years' time that will probably still slightly floor me whenever I hear it, because it's just sucks you into, like, it's just the essence of what all the record is about in some ways. And
the static that we incur.
Yeah, just how hard it is to get back sometimes, but it's all still there. It's like that idea that some of the guys who did the early sound recording technology were convinced that if they built the right machine, they could like hear Jesus give the Sermon on the Mount. It was all still out there somewhere in some form of energy. And like, I don't know if that's completely nuts or not, but I love it as an idea. That if you just tune into the right frequency, it's all still there.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think a little bit of time travel in there. That's great.
And just the idea that, you know, the songs, and I got this wrong because the two songs that are referenced in that, I kind of got Five and Dime was the Nancy Griffith reference. And I thought maybe Paradise was Big Yellow Taxi. And then I read somewhere it was a John Prine thing. And I love the idea that that Nancy Griffith song, she wrote that song in 20 minutes and never thought she'd sing it again. And like 40 years later, here are you guys kind of, there's something. I saw an interview with her. It was on a BBC thing years ago where she sang the song and talked about it. And she said she had to give a songwriting workshop. And she just stayed up all night and basically plagiarized the short story she'd written already. And thought, there you go, I've got a song. I'll sing this at the workshop and I will never sing it again.
Wow.
And that's probably the song she's been asked about most over her career, you know. Just the idea that you never know what's going to resonate or what the connection will be, or you can unspool a thread, but you've got no idea where it's going to go.
Man, isn't that the truth? Aoife has this great story about going to see, I never got to see Nancy as a kid, but Droz and Aoife both did. And Aoife has this great story of going to see her when she was 9 and sending a note backstage and requesting, I can't remember what the song was. It wasn't Five and Dime. It was another one. And Nancy dedicated a song to her. She said from stage, she's like, I got this little note from a little girl, sweet little 9-year-old out there. So I'm going to play this one for you. And it was a turning point in Aoife's life, you know, a big moment that I think is a great example of the kind of moments that I know that, you know, all of us in the band have had with music and with musicians. And there's this wonderful thing that happens in folk music, particularly, I think, where the line between audience and stage is a little thinner than for some other formats of music or art, even in general. And like when I grew up seeing music played, it was a bluegrass band at a pizza parlor, and they would invite people. They played every Saturday night for like 3 hours, and they'd play a bunch of the same songs, tell a bunch of the same jokes, and we all just ate it up. And they would also invite people from the audience to come up, their friends that they knew that they had a few songs that they could rely on. And so, you know, like Don Henley would come up and sing one of 3 songs, not that one, not that Don Henley, a different. and you know, another friend, Ken Owens, would come up and play spoons, this like Welsh guy. And then another guy would come up and dance, and he would also invite us kids up to play and sing. When I was 4, we'd become friendly with the band and friends, and I requested a song during the intermission. I requested Long Black Veil, and John Moore, leader of the band, said, yeah, we'll play it, but you've got to sing. Like, if you sing it with us, we'll play it. And I told him I only know the chorus. He's like, great. So I stood up there on this stage that felt super high. It was probably 1.5 feet off the ground. And he bent he had a mandolin mic, you know, like the short little instrument stands that was like too high for me. And so he like pulled it down, and I'm singing this murder ballad at like 4 years old on stage with like a normal, average, terrible 4-year-old's voice, beautiful 4-year-old's voice, but like, you know, normal. And I say that to just like say that like the welcome that is encouraged and built and passed down through the folk and bluegrass tradition is so welcoming to people. And I think that is something that it's like a very thin veil that makes it all just seem possible and very normal for people just to play music. And yeah, like, you know, this guy, he's the mail carrier, and plays 3 songs. Like, everyone can hold some songs with them and play them and share them with people. And I think that's such a, like, I know that all 3 of us in the band have versions of that kind of thing, and where people just sort of took us seriously, whether it's a note being passed anonymously backstage, you know, Nancy taking that note seriously enough to call out this little 9-year-old Efo Donovan, or John Moore, you know, taking me seriously enough as a 4-year-old to sing a chorus of a murder ballad, or Sarah Giroux, you know, at her jams in the hill country of Texas at a barbecue shop. I mean, it's really a special thing to get adults to take you seriously and not just make you a gimmick or a little cute thing up there. And it's really meaningful, and I think helps kids take themselves seriously enough to really, you know, maybe consider that their thoughts are worth something. And all of that stuff, I think, is still coming out of our music and our songs, and especially this album, the content of this record.
Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas.